The Sportscast, May 15th, 2023. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels: YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to us on your smart speaker. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. We're also on online radio. Visit our website, thesportscast.net. Also, our Twitter, the Sportscast1. Also on Instagram, the Sportscast1. Check out our app, the Sportscast for iOS. And there you have it. Celtics are going to the ECF, Eastern Conference Finals, against the Miami Heat, but they first eliminated the Sixers, who has not been to the Eastern Conference since 2001, and joining us all the way from the Northeast. Pretty happy. Hal Phillips, welcome back.
Glad to be back, Santi. Glad to still be in the playoffs.
Still in the playoffs. Yesterday was the only Game 7 of the semifinals of the NBA playoffs. Jason Tatum, 51 points, the most in a Game 7 in NBA history, to lead the Celtics 112-88. Hal Phillips, how good do you feel?
I feel really good. I felt really good after Game 6. It was one of those games where every 15 minutes or so on Friday, I would remember that the Celtics had won Game 6. And I felt, a little spring in my step, as my roto partner Jamin likes to call it. It was a great series. Hats off to the Sixers. They battled. I think the better team won, but geez, a lot goes on in a 7-game series. It's hard to remember it all. But we are at the halfway point, only the halfway point of the playoffs when you think about it. In terms of the journey, not in terms of games played, but if your team is still left in the playoffs, we're halfway there.
Halfway there so far. Celtics had endured the Hawks, now the Sixers, which has become a little bit of a rivalry. But Tatum yesterday, he broke the record that was set 2 weeks ago by Steph Curry of the Warriors, who scored 50 points in Game 7. Tatum did it again. He's only 25. He went 17 of 28 from the field and added 13 rebounds and 5 assists. Became the 5th player in NBA history with at least 50, 10, 5 in a playoff game. What do you think about this gentleman? Is he the man in Boston now?
He's definitely our man. He wasn't the man for much of Games 5 and 6. He was terrible along with the rest of the team. They miss shots and they lose. That's the formula in today's NBA. But, Tatum went 1 for 14 through the first 3 quarters of Game 6, and it looked bad. Then he scores 16 points in the fourth quarter. They win Game 6, going away. And then he continues that form all the way through Game 7. And the first half of yesterday's game was a bit of an illusion. PJ Tucker scored 11 points in the first quarter. So they led for portion of the first half, but it was really sort of a false impression. That was a close game, and they only led and were as close as they were because PJ Tucker, pulled a blinder. He's not going to be counted on to score 11 points in another quarter in his career. They really were ahead of the game, and then in the third quarter, they came out and just blew doors. Tatum just, if you score 15 points a quarter, you're going to break some records. And that's basically what he did over a 5-quarter span. They pulled him out of the fourth quarter, or he would have done it again.
Yeah. As Hal said, the Sixers had a good first quarter, and then they trailed 55-52 at halftime. So it was close then. So it could have been anyone's game. But the third quarter is where it really counted. The Celtics outscored the Sixers 33-10 to break the game open. Jason Tatum scored 17 points in the third quarter alone, nearly doubling the Sixers total and pushing the game out of reach. That third quarter was key yesterday, wasn't it?
It was strange too. It was weird to watch the Sixers sort of lose control of the game, and they couldn't seem to stop Tatum, but they didn't seem to really try to stop Tatum. Throughout the series, they had got a lot of good shots and been able to sort of push the Celtics into some awkward offensive sets and basically daring them to shoot. And for a long part of that series, that worked out just fine. But when Tatum started hitting, it was almost giddy. Everyone could see that he was hot. He knew he was hot. He was throwing up some crazy shots too, and they were all going in. And the Sixers didn't really know what to do. I can say on the Boston side of the equation, a lot of talk last 2 weeks about, doubling Harden, getting the ball out of his hands, doubling Embiid, getting the ball out of his hands, not doubling Embiid like we talked about last week when Jaylen Brown doubled him and opened up Harden for that three-pointer that won Game 4, which is a game the Celtics really should have won. But at no time during the third quarter did the Sixers choose to double Tatum. He was the only guy on the floor who was shooting it. He was the only one making it. If they had done that and just doubled him and made someone else shoot it, I think they might have been able to calm the game down. But, I never thought that they felt they were out of any kind of rhythm or out of the game until it was over, until they were 20 points behind. They kept calling some timeouts, and then they would go back to a set and just say, hey, let's just calm down and get back into the flow of this game. They would miss. The Celtics would get a rebound, get it to Tatum, and he'd throw up a three-pointer and score. So they just kept losing ground, and they never showed, I guess, enough signs of panic. They never changed their defensive sets to my liking, or even in a discernible way. It was a weird display from Doc Rivers, I guess, who didn't coach a bad series. I thought he outcoached Joe Mazzulla in many respects over the course of 7 games, but third quarter, not a good one for Doc.
And here's why Boston lost. One of the reasons, Embiid had 15 points. James Harden, 9 points.
Yeah,
that's probably was a big factor, wasn't it?
It was. And again, to go back to poor PJ Tucker, who played, so well. He does what PJ does. He doesn't score 11 points in the first quarter. They get destroyed in the first half as well. I think they finished the first half down only 3. And there were some terrible calls, I thought, on both sides, but most of them went against the Celtics in the first half. I thought the 55-52 scoreline at halftime was a bit of a false number. Embiid was never the same once the Celtics went to Al Horford and Rob Williams together. You don't have to freak out and double to the extent that they did in previous games when you have 2 big guys on the floor. What a breakthrough. I'm not sure why that it took them so long to do this, but they finally went to the big man and sat, I guess, Brogdon or D. White, and went with Jaylen Brown at guard, and it changed the whole course of the series. Now, it wouldn't have mattered if Tatum didn't start hitting shots at the end of Game 6. It really would not have mattered. They would not have scored enough points to win that game. And as you and I have discussed over and over, the Celtics are a fair to middling offensive team. They look bad doing it as well. And the defense is what wins them the game. And ultimately, the defense was what secured these 2 victories. They shut down Embiid enough in Game 6 and totally shut him down in Game 7. And when you do that, they can't go inside out with him and Harden.
Al Horford, as you mentioned before, takes points, but he was the main guy in defense. He was guarding Embiid really well throughout the series.
Well, think about it. When Embiid goes to, his post game, and he can do that pretty far up the key on either side, Al Horford can guard him there. But what he can't do is get up close to him, because Embiid will roll by him. I mean, he's quick. Embiid's got great footwork, and Horford is a smaller guy. He can't really get in Embiid's face, when he fades away. But at least he can sell out on that defense if he knows Rob Williams is behind him to clean it up, to protect the rim when Embiid goes in there for a leaner or a floater, having shook Horford. So, I mean, this is basic stuff. This is not complicated defense. You put 2 big guys on the floor when you play against a guy like Embiid, and you take your chances, because if you go any smaller, he just does whatever he wants. And he's a good passer too. That's really what killed the Celtics before they made the switch. He was just moving with impunity in the key to shoot and pass, finding all sorts of open guys along the 3-point line, and they made enough of them to keep them in the series until they didn't.
Boston Celtics down 3-2, came back, won 2 straight. How would you rate this team throughout the series? Was it, maybe they should have closed it out a little earlier, or this was what you predicted before it started?
No one knows what this team is going to do. They're really young. They are discernibly more talented than they were last year when they went all the way to the finals and really should have put the Warriors behind 3-1. They did not win that game 4, gave it away in very similar fashion to games 1 and 4 in the Philly series. No one knows what they're going to do, and everyone is petrified that Eric Spoelstra is going to come up with some crazy defensive scheme to make them look even worse.
You know it.
He will, and because Spoelstra is the best tactician amongst NBA coaches, as far as I'm concerned. What he has done with the Heat so far is extraordinary. They're terrible. That is just not a good roster, and Hero's out, and they're small, and they're not even particularly that quick. But they'll give the Celtics a hard time. I bet you they'll win 2 games. And, of course, the Celtics won at home this last yesterday, to make them 10-9 at home in the playoffs over the last 2 years. 10-9. We're talking about a team that is favored to win the NBA championship. Don't tell me the NBA hasn't changed. The home court advantage is not what it was. And don't tell me that the Celtics are world-beating, favorites to win it all. No one has any idea what this team will do, and I don't. I certainly don't.
Yeah, this reminds me of the Los Angeles team back in 2000, 2001, where they're like Phil Jackson would say, yeah, this team is very unpredictable. Mm-hmm. This has the same vibe for this Boston team. As you said, home court advantage has not become a factor. What happened with Philadelphia winning in Game 5 up in TD Garden?
They just laid an egg. I mean, we've talked about it. I sound like a broken record, even though no one even knows what a record is now. When the Celtics miss, they lose. Their entire offense is built around Tatum and Brown and Brogdon and Smart and even Al Horford shooting threes. If they shoot badly as a team, they lose. They lose to bad teams. And Philadelphia is not a bad team. They didn't even threaten to win that game in Game 5 because they shot it so poorly. So it's no mystery. This has been going on for 2 years. So, when they make shots, I don't know how you beat them. But when they miss them, I don't know how they win. They don't have a plan B. They don't pivot to any sort of different offensive scheme, which, drives me up a wall because if you're the coach, I understand being committed to a 3-point centric offense, but maybe a plan B would work. I mean, you have the tools to do it. They're not small. They're not like a bunch of water bugs, just living out on the 3-point line. That's the other thing that drives me crazy about this team. And then I promise to move on.
It's okay. It's a good session to just let it all out.
That's right. You're my psychiatrist, Santi. What kills me is when you have everybody out on the perimeter like that, and someone does go to the hoop because Philadelphia was sagging to the point where they dared them to shoot threes. But every once in a while, you'd get someone come a little close, and Jaylen Brown has the ability to go around these people. But then Embiid comes, and the Celtics don't have anybody cutting to the basket with that person because it's just freelanced offense, right? So an individual is cutting, going to the basket. Embiid comes over to, get in the way or block the shot. There's nobody that Embiid had to leave in order to mark the driver. So Al Horford is out on the 3-point line waiting for a drive and kick 3-pointer. Everyone's doing that. So they don't have any offensive rebounding, and they have no one to dish to when a big man like Embiid comes over to, get in the way or stop them from driving to the basket. It is the most informal offense you can imagine. It reminds me of playing junior high school basketball. It's that clueless. And actually, that's an insult to Jump and John Hamilton, who was my 9th grade basketball coach. He was a great coach. We had so many great plays, and you could use half of them. Joe Mazzulla could use half of them right now if he cared to, but I guess he doesn't care to.
You mentioned a real brief about Philadelphia. What do you think? What do you think is their future? Is Doc Rivers the right coach there? There's been some criticism online, on Twitter about him. Maybe he should get fired. What are your thoughts over this team?
I don't know. I don't think he deserves to get fired. He actually outcoached his opponent in this series, but the Celtics were just better than his team. That isn't to say that the Sixers weren't good, and that isn't to say the Sixers could not be better. Embiid was a bit of a no-show in Game 7, but I think the Celtics finally stumbled into a way to defend him in a reasonable way. Harden was feast or famine the whole series. He was terrible yesterday. I think Harden is going to go to Houston. I think he's had enough. I think Doc has probably had enough. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and coaches Milwaukee. And then I don't know where you're left. Embiid has another year on his deal, but they could bring in 2 or 3 guys and completely change that team over. I like their pieces. Harris is good. Melton is good. I thought Maxey was great in this series. They're fast. You wonder what kind of team, a running team they would make if Doc Rivers wasn't the coach and James Harden wasn't dominating the ball. So they have, I think, potential as far as I'm concerned, and I thought they were a worthy opponent yesterday. It's interesting about Doc Rivers. I mean, being from Boston, I've known him a good long time, but I've known him even longer than that. When Doc Rivers was coaching Orlando, I thought he was a really good coach. He was squeezing 40, 42 wins out of a terrible Magic team in the, early to mid 2000s. And I was like, wow, this guy is really resourceful and clever. Then he goes to the Celtics and inherits these stars, and they win a championship in his first year, 2008. They nearly win another in 2010. But I don't know that he deployed that talent particularly well. Then he goes to the Clippers, and all of a sudden he's got this reputation as being a coach who handles veterans well. Well, they did nothing. They had an incredible roster. They couldn't get anything done there. And then they bring him into Philadelphia to do the same sort of thing. Each time, he goes and does TV in between these stints. So I like Doc. I don't dislike him as a personality. I don't think he's a bad coach, but he's sort of got this rep now as being someone who you bring in to get a veteran team over the top, which he's only done once, and it was 15 years ago. And I don't know exactly what Doc does particularly well anymore compared to his peers, and considering how different the NBA is now from 2008. So I don't know what's going to happen, but there will be big change in Philadelphia. But I think they've got enough with Embiid and a bunch of other guys and a couple of signings that they could be tough next year. I don't count them out.
True. The couple pieces away, as you said, Harden has been rumored to go back to Houston, and of course, we cannot forget Doc Rivers winning that championship with Celtics back in 2008 when they defeated Kobe Bryant and the Lakers.
Yes. I was at that game. I was at the clinching game 6 in 2008 for the record, and it was a blowout. It was classic Laker, capitulation. They just gave up, and we won by 40.
which Kobe said the toughest defense he's ever gone against was your team.
Well, that may be so, but I just don't know that a really good team lays down like that in Game 6 of the championship finals and loses by 40. I'm sorry, that was not a proud display.
But also, Philadelphia and the Celtics have been a rivalry, ever since the '80s, I believe.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, how much time you got, Santi? I mean, the Celtics and the Sixers have played more games in the playoffs, I think more games, period, than any two teams in NBA history. They used to be the Syracuse Nationals. They only came to Philadelphia when the Warriors, the Philadelphia Warriors, moved to San Francisco in 1962. That allowed Syracuse to move down from Syracuse into the old War Memorial Coliseum, and they became the 76ers in 1963. So they've been playing each other forever. I came of age and graduated from high school in 1982. From 1980 to 1986. It was the best rivalry in the game until the Celtics and the Lakers met in the finals, which they did 3 times. But it was a great rivalry, and they were fearsome rivals. I mean, that was back when actually they fought each other, literally threw punches, and no one got thrown out. It was mayhem, and we loved it. Those days are long gone. I mean, the 76ers haven't made a Final Four of any NBA playoff tournament since 2001, the same Lakers you mentioned. That's Allen Iverson, and that was a terrible team that made the finals back then. So it's been a long time. Long drought continues for the Sixers.
Yeah, Sixers have not been, like Hal says, since 2001 with Allen Iverson, that went on to lose against the Lakers for the championship. So quite sad. But hopefully Embiid MVP cannot make it deep in the playoffs. And Boston, I believe, historically has made it to the Eastern Conference Finals for any team, I believe.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me historically. I saw an interesting stat that showed that in the last 5 years, not counting this season, the last 5 years have produced 5 different Eastern representatives in the NBA Finals, including the Heat and the Celtics, the Bucks, Who are the others? I can't remember right now. But they were five different teams. So that streak comes to an end this year because either the Heat or the Celtics will go. And but man, I think it'll be tough sledding for the Heat. Your Miami Heat, Santi. I think they're a game bunch, but I can't see them winning that series.
We'll see what happens. Let's recap Friday's late games. Lakers beat the Warriors 122-101. It was not even close. LeBron James had 30 points on for 10 to 14 shooting, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists as he snapped a personal streak of 18 straight playoff games, scoring under 30. This LA team looks hot. Is it me or the Warriors are just going something internally?
I think they are going through something internally. I have some very good friends who are Warriors fans, so I've just talked about that team a lot this year. I think that the Warriors felt that they stole one last year, and I'm not saying they were satisfied, but I think they know the end is near, and they felt like they pulled a rabbit out of their hat last season. It doesn't take anything away from what they did. They beat the Celtics fair and square. They solved the Celtics and exposed them in a pretty embarrassing way, frankly. But they're not the same team this year, and everyone knew it. They knew it. And now I don't know where they go. They've talked about keeping the core together. I'd be very surprised if that actually happened. But, Game 6 against the Lakers, again, sort of a disappointment. We picked on the old Laker teams, the Kobe teams, for laying down in Game 6 in 2008. The Warriors didn't put up much of a fight here, just as the Sixers didn't put up much of a fight yesterday. I think that's the only disappointment to me in these playoffs, which have been super fun and unpredictable. But again, as with the Celtics, it's a make or miss league. Now, what does that mean? It means a great series like the Lakers and the Warriors ends with a 22-point cruising victory. It could have been 40. They stopped playing. Both teams did, by 5 minutes into the fourth quarter. That's not great television. It's not great basketball. But it's what happens when all you do is shoot 3-pointers like the Warriors do, and you miss. And that's a sad sort of commentary on the game these days. I'd like to see some closer games. There's not many of them. The only team that dominates and wins its games at home in the old-fashioned way is Denver.
Yeah, it has been like the common theme for this playoffs. There's not been too many overtimes or that one final shot. You see that more in hockey. I've seen that. I've seen a lot of overtimes there for the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, but I've not seen it for the NBA. Hopefully, for this round coming up for the NBA, I think we'll see something closer. We'll see. All right, so we'll preview what's going on. The first series for the Western Conference final between the Lakers and the Nuggets. Jokic versus Anthony Davis, and of course you got LeBron James sitting there on the side. Austin Rivers has been hot as well. Your preview for this series, Mr. Hal.
Well, Denver is the only team that has been close to untouchable at home in these playoffs. Any team. Everyone else has lost games, and in some cases, multiple games in the same series, and still managed to get through. So they've held serve, and that's how you win playoff series in orderly fashion. They've been great. And you know what? They've been great all year. They should be favored to go to the Western final, to go to the NBA finals, rather. And I would be very interested if the Celtics and the Nuggets get through, who is favored in that series. The one thing that I will say, we've said it about the Lakers all season, and I'll say it about the Nuggets as well. It's not a deep team. There's not a wealth of roster quality there. If Jokic should get hurt or be slowed by an injury, Jamal Murray has had, serious injury issues, and I heard that he's a little hobbled now. If Jamal Murray goes down, I don't know that they can win. They just don't have the firepower. And if they lose any of their starting five, I think that they'll be exposed as a little thin. The Lakers, are in the same boat in that if AD or LeBron go down, I think they'll have a hard time winning. But honestly, not as hard a time. They have developed a very deep roster now. They've got all sorts of guys that they can turn to. Now, you can't replace AD. He's been the best player in the playoffs by many, many counts. And LeBron is LeBron. But I say if Denver is healthy, I think they can win. I think they'll perhaps win it in 6 because they're a complete team and they don't lose at home. But man, it's hard to root against the Lakers. Can I go back a bit too and say that I'm a Boston fan. I hate the Lakers, but I did feel myself rooting for the Lakers against the Warriors in that series. I can't account for it, but I think I'm admiring of the way the Lakers have put this team together on the fly. I'm admiring of LeBron and AD, the way they've adapted their games to this unique group of guys that are playing with them, and they seem to genuinely like them. And I think I'm also saying that I was tired of the Warriors. I'm tired of they've been around for a long time now. I mean, Draymond is a complete douchebag. I just don't like the way he handles himself. No one does. I don't think his coach likes him very much. And so it's hard to root for that team as much as Steph is a sympathetic character. So I was happy to see them go out. And I guess part of me would love to see a Lakers-Celtic final. So I'm sort of rooting for the Lakers to make it a good series. I think it will be a good series. But I think both the Lakers and the Nuggets are poised a little bit on a knife edge. I think the Celtics, if Jaylen Brown gets hurt, they've got enough bodies and talent to get along without them. Even Tatum, if he went down, they've won a lot of games this year without Tatum. They'd have to do things differently, but they're deep and they're talented and they're big. The Lakers and the Nuggets don't have that luxury.
Which, FYI, the Warriors GM, he's thinking about leaving the position and looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, they're in complete flux. In a way, the Sixers are not nearly so uncertain about what is going to happen going forward. I mean, Draymond may not get re-signed. They signed Jordan Poole to all sorts of money, and he was terrible this year, all year long. Part of the reason was that Draymond hit him in the face, on national television ultimately, and that's hard to sort of get along as a team when that happens. Klay Thompson was a shadow of his former self in this series. He was not good. He was pretty good against the Kings. He was worthless against the Lakers. They've got a bunch of young guys that Kerr just stopped playing. Jonathan Kuminga, everyone seems to think he's a talent. Kerr didn't play him. So, what happens to that group? They were like, oh, and then the GM wants to leave as well. I would get out of there if I were him. He's a hot commodity. He can go anywhere he wants probably and start over. But I think the Warriors are due to have a reckoning, and I'd be very surprised if they spent the money to bring everybody back.
All right, so back to the Lakers and Nuggets series. You're saying Denver in 6, right? Or are you gonna?
I will say Denver in 6. I think
Denver in 6, okay.
Barring injury, I think that's what will happen. But the Lakers come out and steal one of the first 2 games. Completely different series. Yeah, that's what their goal will be, and because it's just a much more traditional sort of set of circumstances with Denver. Everyone else in the league, I don't think the Heat think twice about going to Boston and winning, and the Celtics don't think twice about going anywhere and winning. I guess that's the flip side to not being able to win at home.
Yeah, the season series between the Lakers and the Nuggets are 2-2 split, but obviously the season, it's a whole different dynamic compared to the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. But go ahead.
No, I was just I didn't realize they split the season series.
Yeah, 2-2. But you just don't know who's missing in those games or not,
But I mean, it's hard not to be impressed with the roster the Lakers have developed. Lonnie Walker the fourth. What a story! I mean, comes off the bench to win Game 6, really win Game 5 rather for the Lakers, and plays well again in Game 6. He started, he was starting earlier this year for them, and in fact, at the end of Game 5, they finished it with Austin Reeves, Lonnie Walker the fourth, and Schroeder, Dennis Schroeder. All 3 of those guys are original roster players from October 2022. And after all the people they brought in, D'Lo and Hachimura and Vanderbilt, all great signings, those are the 3 guys they finished the pivotal Game 5 with. So shout out to Rob Pelinka, their GM. He actually did a pretty good job putting a team together this fall, and then did a great job supplementing it at the trade deadline mid-season.
Yeah. A lot of good role players for this Lakers squad. Never seen anything like it. Health also has been on their side a little bit more. Of course, you don't hopefully it stays on for the next couple of weeks. Miami Celtics, these two have met in 2020 in the bubble.
Yep.
Miami beat them. Your thoughts of this series? What is your prediction, Hal?
I liked the Celtics in 6 as well, but yeah, I think that this group of Miami, this edition of the Heat, peaked in the bubble. I think they had a legitimate chance to win that series, that NBA Finals against the Lakers, essentially on a neutral court. They couldn't get it done, although they showed well. Last year, people don't really want to remember it, but Jimmy Butler had a 3-pointer to win that series against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it went in and out. I mean, that we could be having a very different discussion about the Celtics. They're just so flawed and so fragile, scoring baskets in the second half of big games. You just don't know what's going to happen. That said, this is not even the best Heat team of the last 3 years. They're bringing Lowry off the bench, and they've turned over the starting point guard or starting guard spot to Gabe Vincent. They play Max Strus a lot and count on him to score. They have gone back to Duncan Robinson in that role. Kevin Love plays a lot of minutes for this team and actually makes them big enough almost. I mean, he's 6'10", but he can't jump. He's not quite the rebounder he was. They're just very, very thin, and Tyler Hero hurt his hand and won't even play.
He might play the series, I believe. He could.
Huh?
He could play in this series.
Are they talking about that down
Yeah,
in Miami?
I mean, I heard a couple of weeks ago when he got injured that he could come back around this time. So, but I haven't heard anything lately though.
The problem for the Celtics is that the Heat are very clever, and Spoelstra is a great coach, and you don't quite know what they're going to do to you. And will your young coach and your very by rote offensive team, the Celtics, will they be able to adjust to whatever the Heat throw at them? We've not looked good trying to do that in these playoffs. But on the other hand, no team matches up with the Heat better than the Celtics. We have so many big physical guards to guard their wings. I mean, if you want to put someone on Max Strus and make his life miserable, I mean, you could do it with Brogdon. You could do it with Smart. You could do it with Derek White. Any three of those guys. Like, we put Jaylen Brown on him. He may be the best defender of all four of them. They can take any one of those guys out of the game if they want. Jimmy Butler is going to get his, but I think he's going to have to score 40 to get wins in this series, and he may do it a couple times, but he can't do it 4 times, can he? I don't know.
And he probably has a bad ankle too as well.
He's a bad ankle, and Kyle Lowry is a shadow of himself. They don't even start him smartly, though. Spoelstra is not dumb. He's anything but dumb. He brings Kyle Lowry off the bench now and saves him for the second half and keeps him fresh. And he's an ornery little cuss, that Kyle Lowry. I wouldn't want to play against him. But again, I think we have people who can stay in front of Kyle Lowry at 37 years old. And
I hope.
Yeah, exactly. And Bam Adebayo is about 6'8", and he's sort of all by himself there on the front line. There's nobody to play with him that is of any size. So I think I don't think the Celtics will be playing Rob Williams and Al Horford too much against this team. But I think they're probably better playing Tatum at the 4 next to one of those guys, and then just dropping an endless stream of big, physical, quick, handsy, defensively ornery guards at all these people on the Heat, whether Hero plays or not. We've all watched the Celtics, so I'm done predicting they'll do this or that. We have no idea what they'll do because we have no idea how they'll shoot from night to night.
We could safely say they won't sweep the Heat.
I think that I would, if there was a bet in Vegas to say that this game will go at least 5 games, I think that's a good bet.
That is a good bet. May have a correction. The Heat and Boston Celtics met a year ago for the Eastern Conference Finals, but of course Boston won and having games. They also met in 2020 and then back in 2012 with LeBron. So they've met 4 times in the past 10 years. So
I remember those series with LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh. Those were great teams, and the Celtics were still a really good team in 2011 and 12. That same group that went to the finals in 2010, that won in two. Those were great series. I remember that the Celtics lost a game in a series to them in 5 games. Those were 5 of the closest games I've ever seen. It was the closest 5-game series loss I can think of offhand. Every game was in doubt. They could have won any. It could have won all 5. But we did say that. I think I said that Butler had a 3-pointer in last year's Eastern Conference Finals that could have won it all for him. Didn't go down, and they lost. So Celtics were very, very fortunate to win that series, and everyone up here knows it. That's why we respect the Heat so much. They're tough.
I got a Lakers versus Celtics finals. How about that?
That would be. I mean, the NBA would love that, wouldn't they?
NBA will love it. This is history. Everything. Adam Silver will love it too.
Everyone would love it. It would be a fascinating matchup. We almost had it in the bubble because the Heat ruined that as well, and I suppose they could ruin it too, and so could Denver. I'm not going to go there. I don't want to jinx it, but that would be pretty good fun, Santi. I would enjoy it greatly.
Of course, Miami Heat has a good chance. Jimmy Butler is having great playoffs, but has a bad ankle. But we'll see. If he scores at least 24 points, they might have a chance. But we'll see where this goes. Anything else before we head off onto this beautiful Monday?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground. The stage is set for some really fun doings, and I'm excited that that Celtics have a chance to rest up a little bit. They don't play till Wednesday night. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night is Lakers and Denver, and I think we're basically into every night. There's a Western or an Eastern Conference final game on, and that's a pretty sweet setup. Every day there's a game of real consequence, and can't wait for it to get started.
And every game is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so none of these 10 p.m. West Coast games.
No, yeah, they're all at. Would you say they're all at 9 Eastern or 8:30?
8:30.
Really? So they're going to start. Well, Denver's only 2 hours behind, so that makes sense. But when they play in LA, they're going to start games at 5:30.
5 o'clock, which I heard that's normal in Los Angeles.
I guess they are used to it doing. That seems very early to us East Coasters. But yeah, I would have thought that maybe the finals go on at 9 o'clock. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Today is Chocolate Chip Day. Hal, what goes best with chocolate chips? Cookies, pancakes, brownies, or some muffins.
Oh, muffins. No, it's a cookie. It's got to be a cookie.
Chocolate chip cookies is winning at 50%, pancakes 25%, and muffins at 25%. So, not bad. Chocolate chips is good with almost anything, pastry wise. Not.
Hey, can we talk a little bit of soccer?
Yes.
So I watched Arsenal completely lose the Premiership Championship race by basically laying down at home to Brighton. And there's a great picture of thousands and thousands of Arsenal fans streaming out of the Emirates Stadium with 5 minutes left in the game. They're done. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of players and fans. Hate Arsenal. Love to see that.
Man City is one game away from winning the Premier League. One win away.
Yeah, I guess if they win the next one, it's over, right?
Right.
But the other one that was interesting to me, and they put Barcelona versus Espanyol on national television, and this is just another example of the maturation of the U.S. as a soccer culture. They pipe in the Espanyol Barcelona game to show Barcelona clinching the La Liga championship. So congratulations to them. But Espanyol is of course the weak sister in Barcelona. They and that game was on their home turf. And Barcelona is a great bit of video if you search Instagram for it. Great bit of video of the Barcelona players in the center circle dancing, to celebrate their league victory. And at some point, a couple of Espanyol fans break onto the field, just a couple. And maybe the Barcelona guys thought it would be a flood, but a couple fans run onto the field and the entire team takes off like a bunch of women into the freaking locker room. They couldn't get off the field fast enough. It was an unbelievable display of cowardice from Barcelona. They're dancing in front of, this opposing group of fans. A couple of those fans get onto the field and the players run. It was lame.
Barcelona, champions of La Liga. We'll see if they get Messi. Who do you got between Madrid and Manchester City this Wednesday?
I'm gonna stay with my prediction. I think Man City scores a bunch of goals against them at some point in this home and home. I think I picked them to win 3-1 at Real. They I think it got a deserved 1-1 draw. So I was wrong there, but I think I will eventually come good on that prediction. So I like Man City.
Quite interesting how they neutralize Haaland a bit. So we'll see what happens in Manchester. How about AC Milan versus Inter? Inter's up 2-0 against AC Milan. They play in the same stadium. I just realized that last week.
They do, but it's the fans that make the stadium. So Inter scored 2 goals in the first 11 minutes, I believe, and won the game 2-0 against. They were the visiting team, and the stadium was full of AC Milan fans. It was a pretty impressive display. Dzeko is still scoring goals at the highest level. He's quite a striker.
He's like Giroud. They're scoring in their old part of their career.
Yeah, I think Dzeko is a better scorer than Giroud still, and he's done it wherever he goes, and they're not great teams. Giroud is always playing for a great team and for France, so of course he gets chances. So I like Inter to finish the job there, but anything is possible. That's a really fascinating matchup, if only because they share a stadium. Neither of the teams are very good. I mean, I think they're 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th in Serie A this year. They're not the best the Italian league has to offer, but the idea that they got through and are playing each other is pretty fun, especially as they share a stadium. I'm a little bummed that Tottenham, went out to AC Milan, and I guess maybe that loss looks a little better in retrospect, but only just.
Only just. Pochettino, Chelsea manager.
I don't know why we ever let that guy go.
You would have brought him back.
Oh yeah, I definitely would have, but I think he recognized what he was up against, at Tottenham. It's a team that dreams big but doesn't necessarily want to spend the money or mortgage its future in order to be at the level. I mean, I part of me is disgusted by that fact, but another part of me recognizes that when you're competing against sovereign wealth funds and oligarchs who are literally made of money, it's a very difficult crowd to compete with. So I don't really expect that the current ownership at Tottenham can compete, on money. They have to be more wily. And for a while they were. This year they were not.
Well, there you have it. Tottenham still without a manager. I heard Nagelsmann is not in the running.
Nope, he's out.
So we'll see who's out there.
I think
there you have it.
Graham Potter.
Go ahead.
I think Graham Potter might take that job.
I would not be surprised. I have not heard that name. Interesting.
I think they could get him, and I think he'd actually be a decent fit. He didn't really get a chance to do anything at Chelsea, and you get our manager, we'll take yours, and and that'll be some interesting derbies there in London.
That could be a good fit with Andy Levy, so we'll see what happens there. Well, there you have it. NBA, Premier League, Champions League, a lot going on in the world of sports, and then that kind of dies down a little bit around late June. So we'll see what happens till then. Hal Phillips, what is the best way to reach you online? Also about your book.
Generation Zero. You can get it at finer bookstores everywhere, at Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. Twitter's the best place to reach me. You can see it there on the screen below. But if you want to read some soccer stuff, go to gen0.halphillips.net.
There you have it. We got a lot going on with the NBA playoffs this week, Champions League to determine, and of course, the Premier League to make it decisive. Anyways, you can reach us at thesportscast.net or the Sportscast1 on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll be definitely tweeting around, see what's going on, floating some news. Is Mark Jackson get the Bucks job? We'll find out in a few days or a few weeks. Anyways, Hal, I appreciate you coming on to the Sportscast. Hal says no.
No, I think people would be crazy to hire Mark Jackson at this point, but always a pleasure, Santi. Can't wait for next week.
And this was your update.